This is the lumber I'm going to be using for the wooden surfboard build. This is readily available SPF 2x6s that you can get at Home Depot or any building supply places for the most part in North America. What I've done is I purchased this several months ago so I could let it acclimatize to the shop, and I've clamped it all together using ratchet straps and some clamps, just hoping while it acclimatizes and seasons that it will minimize the warpage, and if there is any warpage, it'll all warp at the same kind of shape. I've looked it all over and it's actually really straight, so I'm very surprised and very happy about that. So I think I'll be okay. So when I initially bought this lumber, it was really heavy. It was a lot of water weight in it. So I know now, even just by lifting it, that it's actually lost quite a bit of moisture. So it's seasoned and I think it's ready to be used. So what I'm going to do now is take the stringer that I created and I'm going to trace out the templates onto each one of these pieces of lumber and then cut them out. So let's get to it. Ideally you want to do this in one day to minimize warpage, because I'm going to be taking this apart now. But I'm going to see how much time I have and just, plug away at it. Also, pro tip, I like using noise canceling headphones when I need hearing protection because I can listen to music or a podcast or the radio and keep the volume down nice and low, and it also filters out any mechanical noise because it's really good on repetitive noises. So, really great. I've left a little extra meat, and I'm just going to take my planer, my power planer, and just plane that down once I get them all cut out. Alright, so I got the lumber all cut out, the rough template. I plan on putting in 2 cedar stringers or 2 cedar boards to kind of just give it a little contrast. But I'm going to keep it all ratchet strapped together to prevent warping until I can get around to planing it down and making everything fit together nicely. And then I'm going to then screw it together and then start shaping. This is a cedar deck board that I'm going to use as a stringer for the center. Originally I was going to do maybe 2 stringers throughout the board, but I've decided that I think I'll just do 1. I'm going to extend the bottom line of the stringer down so that way it makes it easy to line up the boards when I screw or glue the whole bunch of boards together. Do the same to the nose, and also mark the center line, and I'll also extend it to the bottom of the board. Marking the nose, center, transpose to the bottom, and then at the tail. Next, I gotta decide on a template, and I've decided to go with a smaller board, a groveler type of surfboard. So I went on to blendingcurves.com, and they have a ton of templates that you can choose from, but I didn't find anything I liked, so I reached out to them, and Andrew over there, who I believe runs the website, hooked me up with a custom template. I sent him kind of my idea of what I wanted to do, and he was able to make me a template. So I'm going to assemble it. It's really easy. It's printed out onto 8.5 by 11 paper. And what you do is you line them all up, then you tape them together, and then cut out the template. The instructions are really easy to follow. So I highly recommend going out and checking out his site. Other places that you could get templates is you can make your own using some type of vector drawing program. There's a couple free ones out there like Inkscape. If you have Illustrator, certainly you can use that. Things like that. Or you can wing it. You can just kind of create one out of your head or trace an existing board, which if you find a board that you really like to ride, you can do that too. So let's tape this together. Then I can place the template onto the wood and see kind of where things lie, and then kind of adjust from there, and then screw the wood together and then start shaping. I've cut out 2 cedar stringers in addition to the one already in the middle, and these are going to go in the side here. So they're going to give a little contrast to the rest of the spruce, pine, or fir. And when I was selecting the wood, I also tried to make sure to select as much clear pine or spruce or cedar as I could to minimize the amount of knots in it. And generally they call that select wood, but you're going to get some knots, unfortunately, unless you really pay to get wood that doesn't have any knots in it. This will give a little contrast to the board. I think it'll look pretty cool. Just going to take a few moments before I trace out the template on the board. I've clamped all the boards together, and I'm going to just plane it down with my power planer just to remove any high edges, and then I'm going to trace out the template. So for now, I'm just going to keep it all ratchet strapped and clamped together. I have the template all drawn out on it. I won't get around to screwing it together, so I just have ratchet straps and clamps placed on this just to keep it to minimize any warping and just to keep the whole structure together. In a couple days, when I get a chance. And next we'll be screwing it all together. Now that I have the template drawn out, what that'll enable me to do is when I screw it together to know not to put a screw past this line. Alright, now it's time to screw this all together. I'm going to make sure to stay between the lines here. So as I'm putting the screw through the board, I'm not going to come through and then I'll have a hole to fill. Make sure to line up the nose lines the midline. And then back here, make sure the two lines back here line up. As I'm screwing this together, I'm making sure to stay far enough away for when I shape the rails. When I start getting to the edge of the board, that I leave enough meat here, so when I'm shaping, I don't shape into a screw. Hopefully, I've done that properly for most of it. I only just realized that now. On the other half, hopefully, I don't have run into too many issues. Alright, so I have both sides now all screwed together. I ran into a little hiccup and I had to take it all apart and re-screw it together because I realized that I could possibly have some of the screws too far to the top of the board, so when I'm shaping, I could shape into a screw. So keep that in mind when you're screwing the blank together. Hopefully I got them all. I might even have some screw holes that I might need to fill, but that's okay. For a first go at a wooden board, I'm willing to accept that. You learn as you go. Now I'm going to take some wood glue and I'm just going to glue the two sides together. From what I've seen from other videos, is I'll be able to snap the board in half once I'm done shaping. That way I can access the screws that are inside the board. So let's do that now. One thing I really like is using ratchet straps to clamp stuff together, especially something really big like this. So I've made sure to keep this front line all lined up, the mid line, and also the lines at the tail. And that way I know that all of the meat of the wood that I want to work with is actually within this whole blank. Even though it's irregular and kind of cut out a little bumpy, that'll make sure that I can shape a board out of this whole chunk of wood. This is my dust collection system here. It really keeps the dust and the sawdust down while I'm planing the surfboard. What it is it's got this cyclone attachment up here that's connected to a bucket. Then the vacuum attaches to the top and provides the power to the suction, which I got hung up there. And then I have my hose attached to it here, which then runs all the way over to my planer, which works really great. It's pretty much kept all of the cleanup to a minimum. Also, check out my planer. This is a Makita 1900B power hand planer, and this was manufactured in 1987. So this thing is 32 years old, and it still looks like a modern day one, and I don't think they changed the design much, and it works just as good as well. This thing is making short work of the planing on this wood. I did have to replace the blades on it, and while I was at the service center picking up the blades, I wanted to see if I could get a vacuum attachment, but unfortunately I was not able to get one. They don't make them for this anymore, or at least I wasn't able to get it. But crazy that I can still get parts for it. I can still get the planer blade, and I can still get the blade aligner for it too. So Makita 1900B, this thing, workhorse. Alright, now that I got the blank pretty much thinned out to about the thickness that I want, I still got to do a little bit more. I've got to the point where I can remove most of the excess wood. So I'm going to retrace my template out now and cut it out. Now I tried using the reciprocating saw for cutting out the outline of the surfboard, and while the blade is nice and long and can reach all the way through the board, it's a little too violent, a little too slow, it's not that accurate, so this doesn't work so well. I was hoping it would. I also tried using a handsaw, a Japanese style that cuts on the backstroke, and this works really well, but it's a little more elbow grease than I would like to use. And a regular jigsaw blade is just a little too short to reach all the way through some parts of the board, so it's not long enough. So I gotta go at this a different way. Do you know how hard it is to find a long jigsaw blade? The only one I could find is this bimetal. It can kind of cut wood too. Hopefully the teeth aren't too fine. They were out of stock on the wood ones. This is the old blade, and this is the new blade. So I've switched up to my regular stands for shaping surfboards. You can find designs for these online. You can make it out of like a couple 2x4s. It's really easy. Anyways, most importantly, because my floor is a little unlevel, level your stands. Super important. Make sure this is level. check it, triple check it. It'll just save you trouble in the long run. So make sure you level your stands. So I'm gonna take this square, this Shaper's Versus square that I got from Green Life Surf Supply, where I get most of my surf supplies. I'm gonna use this square to double check the width of the blank, this rough blank now, just like when I'm shaping a foam blank. So this makes it really easy because you line your stringer up in the center here, and then it tells you the width on both sides. So it's graduated in 2-inch increments on either side. So that makes it real simple. So I'm just gonna line up the stringer, double check along, and just keep sanding and removing what I need to until I get it to the profile I want. And then the next step after that is I'm going to finish profiling down thickness. I'm gonna thin out the blank on the nose and the tail. And I think I'll call this video done at that point. And then the next step will be shaping the rail bands and doing a little maybe more profiling, foiling of the blank. And we'll see how that goes. Line up the stringer, roughly, and then I can tell here what the width is, and then I can tell the width on the other side at the same time. I can tell just by looking real quick that this side needs a little more removed, and I'll just do that along the length of the board. I'll check it periodically just to make sure that I'm not getting out too far on either side, so it stays, you know, somewhat symmetrical. Important to measure the thickness of the board occasionally while you're planing it to make sure that it's the right thickness before we actually start shaping the rails of the board and then profiling the board and foiling it. So I used to use a caliper like this, and this worked really well, and it's pretty accurate and stuff. But then I made one like this. This one here works really well. So this one is 2 pieces. It's got 2 pieces of aluminum channel here, and then a main board that these are screwed into. And then on the main board I have 1 caliper arm. And then on the other arm I have the arm up here screwed into a piece of plywood. And then I've routed out a channel where the ruler sits. And then when I put the two together, it slides up and down, and then I can take a reading because it corresponds with the end of the caliper. Really neat tool. And I use this to measure the thickness of the blank. Alright, so I got the blank pretty much profiled to the thickness that I wanted at. Next, I'm going to take my belt sander. I'm going to sand the whole thing so it's even all the way across, so that we have a nice square blank to work off of to do my foiling and shaping of the rails, which will be the next video. So I'm going to finish this off, and that'll conclude this video. I think this video is going to be probably long enough as it is. I haven't edited it yet, obviously, because I'm still working on the board. But I shot a lot of footage, so I'll see how much I can get it cut down to make it coherent. Also, I've been using this mask to do sanding. I've also posted a review on this RZ mask. I really like this. I've used this now for a few days, and this thing works really well. So the review I posted, you can check that out also on my channel. I posted that probably a while ago now because I won't be posting this video for quite some time. Anyways. Alright, so I have finished profiling out the rough blank. Now it's to the point where I'm ready to foil and shape the rail bands on this board. So I'm going to thin it out, foil out the rest of the blank, and now it'll start turning into a surfboard. I'm going to have the rails, so that'll be in the next video. But I just wanted to mention a few quick things with my experience thus far working with lumber or wood instead of foam that I normally traditionally build surfboards in. This has been really fun. It's been a real interesting challenge. There's a little bit more work involved, certainly working with wood as opposed to foam. The shaping, the power planer has been a super big help. Belt sander certainly makes a lot of dust, but with my vacuum system that I have, that's been a real lifesaver in terms of keeping the dust down. So in terms of what I've learned so far building this, is if I were to do this again, which I probably will, is I'd probably get a planer, and if I use lumber from the hardware store or from Home Depot, generally what happens is because I'm working with construction lumber, I looked into getting Paulownia wood, which is what I found a lot of board makers making wooden surfboards use. But it's really expensive. It's hard for me to get. It's not native to North America. But I think it's lighter than what this wood is. This is SPF, so it could be a combination of spruce, pine, or fir. It was the most inexpensive wood that I could find because it's just readily available for construction. We have an abundance of it here. The only problem is there's knots in it, so there's knots all over it. And some of those knots can be knocked loose, so I'll probably have to do a little filling, minor, but I do like the look of the knots. It looks cool. It gives the board a really nice look to it. The other thing is, because I didn't plane any of the wood down, and when you just buy it from the hardware store, I tried to keep it as tightly compressed together as possible so it would minimize warping, cupping, and crowning when it was seasoning or drying as moisture was coming out of the wood, because there is moisture in wood and has a tendency to do any one of those things. I minimized the warping, but unfortunately some of these planks did cup a bit, and that's why there's occasionally a gap in some parts of the board. I'm going to be able to fix that when I glue it together. I'll be able to hide some of my crimes. I think what I would do next time is use a thickness planer and plane the boards through once they've been acclimatized to my shop, or once the moisture has stabilized in them. So that's another thing that I've learned. So far I'm really happy with how well this is coming out. Hopefully when I foil it, I won't run into any weird surprises. And when I chamber it, then I'll really know when I start reassembling how well this is going to work. Alright, that's it for this video. The next video is going to be doing the rail bands and foiling the surfboard, then it'll really start taking shape. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, which will be coming hopefully very soon. Bye for now.